Also dhikr, when you do dhikr like subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanallah al-azim, also dhikr should be done with tajweed. People do awrad and things like that. You should do the awrad with tajweed. And you should also do the dhikr as it was given to us by the Prophet ﷺ. You should not change it. The hadith can be transmitted in meaning, some of them, not the Jawami' al-Karim, he'll get to that. But the dhikr that comes down should be said the way that it's taught. And also when it has the same hukm of the Quran and the hadith, the dhikr bil-ma'thur. راوي أحاديث جوامع الكلم أو التعبد بمعناها أثم. So the one who is reciting the Jawami' al-Kalam, and these are the hadiths like لا ضرر ولا ضرار. That's a it's a comprehensive word. The Prophet ﷺ said things like ad-deenun nasiha. Religion is, nasiha can mean sincerity, it can mean good counsel, it means different things. It's a comprehensive word itself. That hadith, you could do a whole book just on 2 words, and Sidi Ahmed Zarruq did a whole book on that. You can do a whole book on kalimatani khafifatani ala lisani thaqilatani fil mizani subhanallahi wa bihamdihi subhanallahi al-azim. These are light words on the tongue, heavy words in the scale. The Jawami' al-Kalim are those things that the Prophet ﷺ related that have these meanings. So, and also those things that are for ta'abbud, like Sayyid al-Istighfar. There's a Sayyid al-Istighfar, Allahumma inni as'aluka, also Allahumma inni as'aluka min fuja'at al-khayri wa a'udhu bika min fuja'at al-sharri. These are things for ta'abbud, and so you should recite them appropriately. And if you don't, and if you recite them with their meaning, then it's sinful. That's what he's saying. Don't do them by their meaning. في الغير للدار بمدلولات الألفاظ أن يروي بالمعنات. So he's saying, but other than those, for the one who's dari, yadri, he knows the meanings of words. So if you have hadith that, one thing I noticed about Sheikh Abdullah Dindaya, because I've translated for him for several years now, he mashallah, he memorizes. I was once translating for him, and he related a hadith. He'll relate a hadith with meaning. I've seen him do this many times. He doesn't give the exact thing, he just gives a meaning. And he related a hadith once, and he said, هذا من طرف الحديث, it's just part of the hadith. And then when we were, after we went back, and I was in the room with him, and I said, سيدي الحديث ذكرته من صحيح مسلم. قال نعم. قال ايش الحديث؟ قال طويل. He said it's a long hadith, I said ممكن نسمعه. He went maybe 2 pages just from his memory. So he could do that if he wants, but he doesn't. He takes what he needs. What's the, like the doctor, he just takes what he needs for that specific situation and does that. And so you can do that if you know the madlulat. And then أن يروي بالمعنات. المعنات is a شاذ اللغة for معنى, and he just does it for the wazn. So you can do that. And then he says ومن روى مختلقا ولم يبن للناس وضعه بعصيان قم. So if you relate something that is مختلق, in other words it's موضوع, it's a fabricated hadith, then, and you don't clarify that to people, it's a ma'asiyah, it's disobedience. And it could go under a very dangerous category of lying about the Prophet. So if you know something is, the ulama, generally one of the bad signs of this age is this attack on weak hadith. There's this whole movement to expurgate the weak hadiths from the collections. In fact, some people even redid the collections by taking out all what they thought were the weak hadiths in the collections, and so doing Abu Dawud Sunan without weak hadith. And this is something that many of the muhaddithun said was innovative, because the weak hadith are accepted by the ulama. They have a lower grade, but they're accepted. And in fada'il al-amal, they're very important. Many of the fada'il, the virtuous acts that people do, are based on these weaker hadiths. So it's very important in wa'az, if somebody's doing exhortation, they can use a weak hadith as long as it's not extremely weak and they know it's weak and it doesn't have a legal ruling related to it other than fada'il al-amal. Because there's hadiths, for instance, in birr al-walidain, taking good care of your parents. There's hadiths about that are very important, and they're not sahih, but they're very powerful. And so a wa'il has permission to use those, and he doesn't have to clarify that they're weak, because people hear weak and they just think it's like, doesn't mean anything, but it is. It's a weak hadith is from like a B- to a D. It's not a F. It didn't flunk. It passed the grade. And so the probability that the Prophet ﷺ said it is higher than that he didn't. Right? So just to reject it, you could be rejecting something the Prophet ﷺ said, which the ulama never did. But in terms of the legal rulings, the weak hadith are something different. So what he's saying is you should clarify when you recite something. And even some of the mawdu'at are wisdoms. من عرف ربه فقد من عرف نفسه فقد عرف ربه. That is, I wouldn't put it under the mawdu' category, but a lot of ulama spoke about that hadith, and Imam al-Ajluni relates it in his book and actually argues that some of the people that related it were big muhaddithun, but the sanad, we don't have a clear sanad for that. And so that's a situation where it's important to clarify that. Or kuntu kanzan makhfiya, for instance. A lot of the Sufi hadiths that are taken very seriously in tasawwuf might not have a sanad. Some of the ulama say yu'rafu kashfan, that it's known by kashf, and that's not a hukam, that's not a legal judgment for hadith literature. It doesn't mean that it's not true for the individual, because they could have that knowledge, but it doesn't hold water with we have a very rigorous criteria that the ulama gave us to determine whether something's sound or not. And so he says that, if you don't do it, and then he says, تحريم ما شرع أباح كالماء خصص في تحريمه أو عما. So this is, it's also prohibited to make something haram that Allah subhanahu made halal for you, like water or something like that. So حرمت على نفسي اللبن, things like that. والأمر بالذنب وأن يحدث بكل ما سمعه أو يملث. So he's saying here basically that there's a hadith in the Sahih Muslim that he begins كفى بالمرء كذبا أن يحدث بكل ما سمع. So it's enough to consider a man a liar that he relates everything he hears. And one of the things that you'll see in hadith literature is when they call people liars, they don't always mean intentional liars, right? But they meant that they related hadith without ascertaining. They just heard it and they transmitted it on. So in Arabic, a lie is intentional or unintentional. If it's intentional, it's obviously worse. But if you say something that you have no right to say, and you say it as if it's fact, it's considered a lie, even if you weren't intending to say it as a lie. And that's important to know. That's a distinction between lying in English and lying in. So if you said that, Zayd's in Istanbul, and you don't know Zayd's in Istanbul, but you say it as if it's a fact, it's a lie. Right? And then if you heard, then you have to say, I heard Zayd is in Istanbul, or so-and-so told me Zayd is this. Then you put it on the other person. But for you, like say so-and-so told you, and you haven't ascertained it, and then you relate it as if it's fact, That's what they're talking about. That's enough to consider a man a liar who just transmit things that he hears without ascertaining. إِن جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا. And in the qira'ah sab'iyya, فَتَثَبَّتُوا. Both, you have to do both. Tathabbat, make sure that it really did happen, and then tabayyan, clarify what exactly is being said, disambiguation, know what's being said. So you need to do both. You need to know the source, is it true, and then you need to know what does it mean. I mean, those are both really important aspects of language. I'm not doing that. And so, and then also, he says, yamlutha, which is where you say something like a promise, but you're not planning on fulfilling it. Right? So that's prohibited to do. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu lima taquluna ma la taf'alun. Why do you say what you don't do? If you make a wa'd al-mu'min dayna sadiq, you have to fulfill. And that used to be really important for people to do that. To make sure that they were doing. When did you give me that? Because I didn't see that come. Okay, so a few more minutes here. فَمَخِبُرٌ بِغَيْرِ مَا تَظَنَّنَا ثُبُوتُهُ يَجِبُ أَنْ يُبَيِّنَ. So that we talked about that just now. That's very important. Just finding out what's been said. Anyway, these rules they're rigorous, they're difficult, but this is what will transform a society or a civilization. I mean, if we really took this seriously and practiced these things, it would really change the state. One of the things the Imam Abu Dawud radiallahu anhu said that, he said he collected 500,000 hadith, 500,000, 500,000. And he put the hadiths that he collected into his collection, and then he said, but there's only 4 that a Muslim needs to practice. And one of them is tarkuhu ma la ya'nihi, to leave what doesn't concern him. The hadith, there's a riwayah musalsala from Malik on aqbil ala sha'anak, means mind your own business. And Imam Shafi'i asked him, how old are you? And he said, aqbil ala sha'anak, mind your own business. And then when anybody asked Imam Shafi'i how old he was, he used to say, aqbil ala sha'anak, mind your own business. Fudul is this curiosity. The Arabs call it fudul. It's the idea that, how much did the house cost? Or how much, those things, a lot of it's decorum. It's not haram, but it's decorum. And societies are distinguished by the quality of their courtesy. The Muslims were traditionally, and the Turkish society was very much a society of very high decorum, very high protocol. Syrian society has a lot of that also. It can become stifling, undeniably. If people that know Hyderabadi society, Hyderabadi is also, it's a very highly great decorum in the society, but those arise out of refinement. That's where they come from, and again, they can be stifling, but they're also they're when they're in their proper balance, they're very beautiful, and they give us an aspect of our nature that is very elevating. In the light of the modern world and the proliferation of information, is it important to mention and discuss what happened between companions because of the confusion, all the confusion that is out there? It's a good point about the internet is a real fitna, undeniably, and it's just so many websites, and there's so much information and disinformation and confusion, and So it becomes very difficult, but you end up also being just one more. I mean, what I think what's important for the Muslims at this stage is to build institutions and then renovate the existing institutions. Al-Azhar is a great institution, and the importance of Al-Azhar can't be underestimated. Al-Azhar, the tradition of Al-Azhar is a great tradition. It's a scholastic tradition and a spiritual tradition, and it's a normative Islam. It's in that sense, it's an orthodoxy. And so that's an institution that really needs to be renovated. And there's people trying to do that, and may Allah give them tawfiq at that. This is an institution also here. May Allah give them tawfiq. Dr. Rajab and his people that are here in this institution are trying to do a similar thing. These are scholars of a very high standard. I mean, you speak to them, and they're not just scholars of the Islamic tradition. Just sitting the other night with several of them, they were speaking French and Turkish and Arabic, and they know other languages. They're reading modern philosophy. They're really thinking about a lot of things, and they know the tradition. They know their tradition, and so I think building these institutions where orthodoxy, and by orthodoxy I mean in a broad-based sense. A good definition of tradition that I heard was that tradition is the living faith of the dead, whereas traditionalism is the dead faith of the living. And unfortunately, there's a lot more traditionalism than there is tradition, because traditionalism becomes ossified. It's no longer. Arnold Toynbee, the great British historian, talks about creative responses to challenges, that civilizations will thrive or decline based on their creative minorities' responses to the challenges that confront them. America's in one of these situations now. There are massive problems that are confronting the United States, and whether or not they're a creative minority, and there still are some really creative people in the United States. There's a level of scholarship there that's still very impressive, and anybody who monitors the books in that culture is very aware of that. There's a lot of thinking still going on in their academic institutions, and because of that, but whether or not they take the advice of these people is that remains to be seen. It's always dangerous to predict the fall of anything. I once said to somebody several years back when the Soviet Union was collapsing, I said, how does it feel to be part of a collapsing empire? He said, never underestimate a people whose national pastime is chess. Right? So, wise piece of advice. The Ottomans, they predicted their downfall in the 16th century. They were already talking about they've got 50 years left. So they went into, my mother was born, there was a caliph. My mother, when she was born, there was an Ottoman caliph. It wasn't that long ago, and it's the longest running family dynasty in human history. Is there any other one longer? Do you know of any other? Okay. But it's definitely one of them, if not. I mean, 800 years is a long time. Yeah. I mean, the English dynasty, they're like spring chickens. The Hanovers. So yeah, we have to, what's called radd al-shubuhat, refuting the obfuscations, things that cause doubtful things in the hearts of people, is an obligation on scholars. In regards to sharhuha bil